Welcome to our celebration of International Women's Day. I'm Cindy Ohlenforst, Chair of the K&L Gates Women in the Profession Committee, and I'm excited that so many of us are able to come together today for our celebration. The theme of this year's International Women's Day is Embrace Equity, a theme that should resonate with all of us, no matter where we are. And I hope that after today's presentation, you'll have some time to brainstorm with each other about how each of us can help embrace equity. As our global firm is planning its events around the world, Liz Walker is a perfect choice for our kickoff speaker for today. Her impressive career path includes posts in UK, Germany, the United States, and she's currently in Brussels. One of her most impressive stints has been as general counsel for BT Global Services, a division of British telecom company that's one of the Financial Times Stock Exchange 20s. In that role, she led a global team of lawyers, compliance, and regulatory colleagues of over 160 people in 60 countries managing their information and communications technology services. Before she became GC in 2014, she had spent 2 years as Vice President of Organizational Health, a BT-wide program focused on innovation and creative thinking and ensuring a common vision of employee engagement at its very heart. That role, I'm sure, is a catalyst for her comments today, as well as for her work in helping others succeed to the best of their abilities. While at BT, she also spent time seconded in the United States, where she was commercial manager for an outsourcing business when it launched. She then went to Germany, where she was in commercial contracts director, overseeing Australia and Switzerland as well. Her long career of global work often meant pioneering in the business, using her own unique way of finding out how to do things. Like most good leaders, she recognizes the importance of teamwork. When I asked her about her work at BT, she responded by describing her team as brilliant. She also focuses on the importance of allies and on recognizing that each one of us, no matter our experience level or our position, is critical to the success of our firms and our companies. Today, Liz is using her legal and commercial and governance experience as an interim CEO, including at Cancer Research UK, the UK's largest cancer charity. She also spends time working to help others and succeed in her role as executive coach. Liz wouldn't describe herself as extraordinary, but I think you'll agree with me that she is.
When I was at school, I never thought I'd become a GC. Heck, I didn't even think I'd become a lawyer. I didn't know I could. In fact, whilst I was at school, there were a lot of things I didn't think I'd become. According to my teachers, I was average, and average people do average things. I wasn't one of the smart ones, so I didn't get extra tuition to help me get into Oxford, Cambridge, or a red brick university, the equivalent of Ivy League, and nor was I in need of extra tuition to make sure I obtained the basic qualifications the school was prepared to tolerate. I was average. Therefore, I was like most people, and I was treated as such. Most of all, I believed it. The reason I start here is that this year's topic of embrace equity resonates really strongly with me. Equality is important for sure, but that's more about focusing on ensuring everyone gets the same opportunities. And that, it seems to me, fails to recognise that we're not all starting from the same standpoint. Equity is about understanding that different people need different things, and that helps them succeed in life. I'm truly honoured to be speaking to you today, the average girl who made her own rules and is now a very different person to the one who left to forge her way in the world all those years ago. Well, I say different, but I think I really mean evolved. I'm still me. Since this average girl left school, the first in her family ever to have an A-level, in other words, to graduate high school, I've learned who I am, and I've learned how to be comfortable in my own skin. And even when I'm not, I know I can centre and ground myself for whatever comes next. Sure, I'm still hampered by indecisiveness and self-doubt from time to time, but I coach myself and remind myself that I am who I am, and that I've achieved a lot, just differently to others. And the biggest proof is that I'm doing okay, more than okay. Being who you are and being okay with it is part of the bigger picture to success. But I didn't always think like that. And I'd like to take the opportunity today to share some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. Some of them I learned the hard way, and some of them I learned because I saw opportunity and I saw others were doing it, so why couldn't I? Some lessons I learned because I'm a firm believer in that you can only be yourself, although being yourself with skill is even better. I hope these tips work for you, whoever and wherever you are, whether you're someone just starting out or whether you're well into your career journey, whether you're a lawyer or not. You are you and you matter. Now, early in my BT career, it was just about a year in, I guess, I spent weeks here and there in America working on a few contracts, and my boss in the UK asked me if I'd go back to the US from time to time. Now, I thought he meant another week here or there, so immediately I said yes. My boss suggested, however, I might want to think about it, as he'd really got a 2-year secondment in mind. And if I'm honest, I was a bit scared. Actually, I was a lot scared. What if I didn't like it? I didn't know where I was going to live, and all the other secondees had wives. Of course, there were no other women. And I'd be on my own because I wasn't married. I thought of all the reasons I shouldn't do it and what might happen, but I also thought of all the reasons that it might go well, of the things that could happen if I did it, and what I could learn, and I'm really glad I did. It cemented me in a mantra that I still live by. If you're faced with a decision, then take the decision that opens more doors than it closes. In fact, that's one of my first lessons, one I want to share. And it's the one piece of advice that I always give to mentees and coachees. As an ardent procrastinator, I'm often inwardly compelled to do nothing, but that achieves nothing. You can be inactive and nothing happens, or you can be active and something does. If it doesn't quite work out, or you don't find it okay, then do the next thing, and the next. Keep moving forwards, or sometimes sideways, if it gains you something that's not already in your proverbial kit bag, your skill bag as it were, because then you've got more tools in your arsenal and you can move forward. I truly enjoyed my time in America. I met new people, I found new ways of doing things, but I also had many trials and tribulations that I had to overcome. But that added even more skills, even if I didn't realise it at the time. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, I was female, I was English, and I was young. Something that didn't go down too well with the very traditional GC who used to refer to me as that woman, and actually I'm sure he never did recall my name. However, our VP Finance was an ally. He stood up for me, endorsed what I said, and even deferred to me in public, asking my opinion and loudly thanking me for a good idea or way forward. He used my name. So, Gerard, I'd like to thank you. I think he was the first real ally I had at work, well, other than my boss, who had seen my potential, and against what I now know is a lot of opposition, asked me to take the role in the first place. He gave me confidence that I was doing the right thing and it was okay. Allies are important, even to those of you who are so sure of yourselves that you don't think you need one. You do. All good things come to an end, and I left the US and moved to Germany. I spoke German as I'd studied in school. Remember, I had at least one A-level. Was I scared? Oh yeah. But I took my own advice, knowing that it would open more doors than it closed, and was Frankfurt bound in no time. Now, I could go on about the experiences of working abroad, but it doesn't matter if it's a new country, a new subject, or even a new way of working. Embracing change and finding out new things is an opportunity. Even if it scares you, chunk it down into small steps and take one step at a time. Opening one door at a time. Doing nothing is not an option. If you find a door that seems shut, go around it. Find the door that opens and take that path. Just don't let the door that doesn't open or doesn't go anywhere stop you. Therein lies frustration. And that leads you either or you to the situation not being okay, and that's not good. Now, I know that all sounds very well. It sounds like I gained a heck of a lot of confidence, but that's also not true. I gained some for sure, but I was still that average girl from an average town, and I was working as a commercial contracts director, negotiating big, ugly outsourcing contracts. But I wasn't like a lot of my colleagues. I wasn't a qualified lawyer. I wasn't like them. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details that took me to studying evenings and weekends, first obtaining a law degree and then my LPC, but I will say I saw I needed to do something if I wanted something to change. But I was terrified. What if I failed? I was a senior manager by this time, and one, I hadn't really got the time, and two, what on earth would people think if I didn't do very well? So that's my next tip. Stand up, embrace opportunity, but take it one step at a time. For me, firstly, it was getting accepted into law school. Then it was finding the right balance to work and study. Then it was the first year, then the second, and so on. It was really hard, but I did it. I was fortunate to have another ally who believed in me, a GC who was confident and sure of himself, but who was willing to do things differently and prepared to support me. The most important thing he ever said to me, and boy did he like to talk, it was to say, I hope you're not doing this qualifying thing for us, and I hope you're doing it for you. You're good at what you do, and you earned your place on this team. However, I knew it would mean many doors weren't open for me if I didn't do it. So I was doing it for myself, and again, I'm glad I did. Now, for many years, I didn't tell anyone this story. I wanted people to think I was like everyone else, that I went to university straight from school, I went to law school, I did my articles, my training contract, like everyone else. But I didn't. I did it my way. I did it differently because I'm different, and that's okay. Being your authentic self is so important. And as soon as I started to find out more about myself and be me, a lot more followed. I'm honest about what I like, what I find challenging, and what I don't like. I try to understand things from a different perspective, even the things I don't like. I try to be more comfortable in those things. I also learned to understand more about others and adapt my style without losing who I am or changing to something I'm not. And this is how it started. So imagine, it's true. I had a boss with whom I shared a pod and an open office plan. I came in every day to all his documents all over my desk. He was very neat. I'm not. If I wanted to use my desk, and bear in mind this was before remote working had even been invented, I had to move his neat row of documents. If he wanted to converse with me, he would email, and he sat not 2 feet away from me, and I found it extremely frustrating. I'm a talker. Well, you get the picture. But anyway, we were just different. I have to say, I was ready to quit, and every day I went home sad. Shortly afterwards, we were at a worldwide meeting of the team, and we were attending a session about personality types. And after answering a bunch of questions, I found out I was an extrovert. Who knew? I was more intuitive. I thought on my feet, and I could see links between things, instinctively. And I was pretty perceptive. My boss, on the other hand, was an introvert. Perhaps the email should have given that away. He thought long and hard before he spoke. He spoke he spoke slowly, and he judged everything. Especially my mess and my non-structured way of working. He also really found it difficult, the fact I spoke my thoughts out loud. Now, I'm not saying I was right and he was wrong. That's not it. We were just different. You need extroverts. You need introverts. You need difference. Let's face it, if we all thought the same, that would be terrible. Anyway, back to the seminar. We spent time not only understanding more about ourselves and how we like to do things, how we like to communicate, and more importantly, how we don't, but also thinking about people that were different to us, how they might communicate, and how importantly they like to be communicated with. And it was the first time I'd really given any thought as to who I really was and why I was different to perhaps some of my colleagues, those who like quiet and stillness, to be able to think. Those people that would write everything down before sending it off. But how I like to have a conversation and get my own thoughts in order. And it was possibly the biggest experience that opened more doors than it closed. I understand and understood more about who I am. And I've spent every day since not just gaining legal, regulatory or other helpful knowledge that will help me in being better in what I do, but in learning things about leadership and about how to do things, how I can be more me, but with skill. Now that sounds great, but I'll share something else with you. It's about upskilling. I was at a big presentation with the whole of the European and Latin America's leadership team. We were in Brazil and presenting our change program to the whole of the Latin America sales team. Each of us in the leadership team had a part to play, even the lawyer, me. I was really nervous, And when it was my turn to stand on the stage and deliver my part, I stepped up. I got on the stage, but I froze. Well, I say I froze. The top half of me froze, but my right leg shook so violently I couldn't control it. I stammered, I stuttered, and I just could not control my voice or what I had to say. I guess that average bit had come back to haunt me, and I kept thinking I just wasn't good enough, and I couldn't do it. So guess what? I couldn't. Now my boss, the CEO, another ally as it happens, he took me aside afterwards and said he'd no idea I'd react like that. He'd never seen it coming, and he was surprised. I'd always come across with confidence. And actually after that, I avoided public speaking, thinking I couldn't do it, so I didn't. That was a door that just was not leading to opportunities for me. However, it wasn't really true. I was denying myself opportunities. I was doing nothing. So what changed? I was supporting a volunteering project. I'm a senior volunteer with the Scouts, and I was leading a piece of change. I realised I couldn't ask others to change or embrace change if I wasn't prepared to do it myself. So I made a promise to myself. Not a hope, not a perhaps, not a would-be if it could or anything. It was a promise that I would change, and I would change the one thing that was holding me back. I was going to be comfortable, or at least more comfortable. And the first time I did it, I just did it with, this time it just needs to be better than Brazil. I stood up. There was a washing machine going on in my stomach. It was on full spin. I felt awful. I could have just sat down or thrown up. I was a volunteer. I didn't have to do it, but I'd made that promise. So I decided to be myself and own it. I stood on the stage and shared my promise. Not that I'd promised them I'd learn, but that I'd promised myself I would. And that's another tip. Promise yourself you're going to do something and hold yourself to that promise. Let's face it, you wouldn't break a promise to someone else, so why break a promise to yourself? I told them how I felt, that it was hard, but that I was determined to do it. I was honest and I was being me. I told them a little about myself, how I show up, what works and what doesn't. In fact, that's another tip. Depending on the circumstance, you can either share it out loud or just to yourself. I found a friendly face in the audience, relaxed into knowing I just had to be better than Brazil, and it got better. Sure, the spin cycle was a cotton wash by the time I'd finished, but it was better, in fact way better than Brazil. Now, I wouldn't say I love public speaking in any way, but I reflected the other week when I stood on stage, and I almost enjoyed it, not quite. And now I accept without thinking 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't do something or why someone else can do it instead. Sure, even today I'm aware of my washing machine, but I know that's me, it's okay. And that leads me to my next tip, practice. Practice makes perfect, or at least it makes better. You don't have to be perfect, you have to be good. You have to do what needs to be done, but you don't have to be perfect. So if I see something I want to do better at, I practice. Sure, I don't always succeed the first time, but it does get better. I wanted to get better at leading my team. I thought about how I liked to be led and how I didn't. I practiced new ways of doing things and kept moving forwards. Sure, I don't always get it right, but one of the other things I learned about myself is I like feedback. In fact, I need feedback. I need to know I've done okay, sometimes by asking someone else, and sometimes it's by reflecting, and that doesn't come naturally to me, but you get the picture. So to summarise, be your authentic self. You are who you are, and I'd encourage you to spend some time really thinking about who you are and how you show up. Don't pretend to be someone else. That's way too exhausting. The more you can be you with skill, the more authentic you will be. The more comfortable you will be, and the more comfortable others will be with you. Take the decision that opens more doors than it closes. You gain experience, you gain skills. You put those skills into your metaphorical personal kit bag and you can use them again and again. Doing nothing isn't an option. Just seek to learn, develop and grow. Just seek to move forwards. And if you want to do something, promise yourself you're going to do something and hold yourself to it. You don't have to share it out loud, but it might help if you do. If you don't want to, perhaps write it down. Write it down, put it where you can see it, on the mirror in the bathroom or the screen of your computer. Allies are important. Have them and be one. Know who your allies are and don't be afraid to show up as an ally for someone else. Stand up and embrace opportunity, but take it one step at a time. You never know what might be around the corner. And be yourself with skill, and that means practice. You don't have to be perfect, but if you don't practice, you won't get better. Whether trying out new leadership practice or doing something you've shied away from or learning something new. So I hope my story and a few of the lessons I've learned along the way are helpful to you. I hope you see that being different doesn't mean you can't do something. It means you can, just differently. And lastly, back to equity. Imagine a world free of bias, free of stereotypes and discrimination. A world that's diverse, equitable and inclusive. A world where a difference is valued and celebrated. I'm proud of those who are standing up. I'm prouder still of those allies that are standing tall and helping clear the path, because it means for every step we're closer, and we're closer to diversity and inclusion in every walk of life. And if you remember back to last year's theme of International Women's Day, Breaking the Bias, we said we needed men to be part of breaking the bias. It requires a collaborative effort, and the same's true of equity. It will take every single one of us to look around and ask ourselves what we are doing to understand someone else's perspective, and think what we can do to make a difference that's valued, celebrated, and most importantly, everyone is given a chance to let their difference be the thing that gives knowledge and knurling. Enabling us all to think differently and embrace change has to be the right thing. It will make for better teams, better experiences, and better collaboration, which means we all take something positive rather than some people feeling like they've been left with a negative. I encourage you to be yourself, get diverse opinions, and always be mindful that we need to have fair representation of those who are impacted by the decisions we make. Thank you.